Hey everybody, this is Tracy here with another edition of A View from Tracy's Point. And as promised, I was coming right back with the recap for Season 5, Episode 5, which was titled A Long Road Home. And after this recap, we will be back on schedule. There's a new episode coming on tonight, and I promise to get that to you guys by tomorrow morning. So we're going to do it a little different this week. We're still going to break the show up based on the characters, but instead of, giving you guys a recap of the flashback scenes, I'm going to put the flashback scenes in the recap for each individual as it pertained to them because of the way the flashback scenes were done in this episode. And so we are going to start out with Kate. So the show picks up with Kate telling Toby her story, about being in the abusive relationship and getting an abortion. And so her story, so she's telling him her story and why she chose to have an abortion and what the experience was like. And she made the decision alone and lived with it alone. And so Toby says that he's trying to wrap his mind around how they took 2 years to have their son, Jack, and she never thought to mention what she had been through. And so Kate explains that the boyfriend was so cruel and Toby wants to find the boyfriend and kill him. So Kate says that, it was in the past, let it go, forget about it. But Toby is like, well, if it was really in the past, it wouldn't have taken you 4 years to let me know. So obviously you've been living with this and it has been bothering you. And so that night in bed, Kate is giving it more thought about what Toby said about it still having some type of impact on her. And so she decides that once Toby falls asleep, that she is going to do a Google search for Mark. And so then we have a flashback scene that shows Kate at the Women's Center, getting ready to have the abortion. And she has to go through like this long list of questions that they're asking her. And then, after she answers all the questions, she tells the lady, I still want to do it. Can we get it over with? And the lady lets her know, or the doctor, I believe it was, lets her know that, this was just a consultation and now you have to wait 24 hours, think about it. And if you still want to do it, then come back. On this flashback scenario, Rebecca has actually gone out of town. And I can't remember if she had gone to New York with Kevin, who had an audition. It was like his first acting audition, but she is not there. Randall's gone to college. And so Kate is home alone and she's like really, really dealing with this alone. And so she listens to a voice message that Rebecca has left. And Rebecca was like, I hope you're okay. Give me a call. Let me know how you're doing. So back in the present day, Kate lets Toby know that she spent the night cyber stalking Mark and has made the decision to confront him. And so she wants Toby to go with her and he agrees. So Toby and Kate, they arrive at Mark's job and coincidentally, he lives in San Francisco. Because remember, the flashback scenes, like where they were born, that's all in Pittsburgh. So the fact that both her and Mark end up on the West Coast in California and are only a drive away, I think was, kind of cute or kind of weird or kind of convenient, I guess I should say. So he offers to go with Kate, but Kate says that she needs to do it by herself. So he stays, that she wants to do it by herself. And so she found the place where he works at via MySpace. And so I was like, dang, is MySpace still up? And I actually meant to Google MySpace to see if it was still up. And dang, people still use it. Like, my first social media platform was Facebook. And the only reason I ever heard of Facebook was because a coworker of mine had bought my first book, and this was like in 2009. And she was like, do you mind if I put a picture up and tell people about it on Facebook? And I was like, well, what is Facebook? And so she, got me hooked on it. And now I'm on Facebook all the time. And before that, I used to be on the Tom Joyner message board. And I might have told y'all about that. Like, I ought to do a a video on the Tom Joyner message board, because when I tell y'all, social media is tame. Social media is tame compared to what used to go on that Tom Joyner message board. So anyway, back to Kate. So in the flashback scene, Kate goes to Mark's place, and, you know, he opens the door and says that he knew that she couldn't stay away. And so you guys remember the whole scene at the cabin where, you know, he was being abusive to her, and then she had to call, you know, for them to come and get her. And I think Randall and Kevin came and got her, but they didn't tell the parents. And I might be confusing it, but something happened when she was with Mark, and Mark went to cutting the food. And so, you know, he seems to be like, okay, well, you know, you came back. I knew you would. You wouldn't miss me. So then we go back to current time. And so she has gotten out of the car with Toby, and she's walking up to Mark, and as he's standing outside this music store smoking a cigarette. So young Mark, you know, back in the flashback scene, he makes Kate breakfast, and he's talking and all excited to see her, like, you know, nothing's going on, like he wasn't a butthole, you know, back at the cabin. And so he says that he really missed her and asks if she's still upset about what happened. And so he apologizes and tells her that, you know, he can't control his rage sometime, and that it's not intentional. It's just something inside of his brain that's going haywire. So Kate lets him know that she isn't there to forgive him. And then immediately you can tell that Mark has gotten into his feelings, and that, you know, he doesn't want to confront what happened at the cabin that night. So they're sitting on the couch, and the movie Airplane is on. And so she asks him, you know, oh, please don't turn the TV. Let's watch this. And so, you know, she's all happy to be sitting there with him watching the movie. But Mark, you know, is like, I don't want to watch this. Like, can I turn the TV? And so Kate is enjoying the movie. Mark is irritable. And so then she starts having a flashback scene, you know, to when Jack was still alive, and they were all in the living room watching TV. And I believe Airplane might have been on, and that's why she had such an emotional attachment to the movie. And so then Mark, you know, decides to get up and go into the kitchen for something. And when he comes back, you know, Kate realizes that it was a mistake, you know, to go to his apartment, and she has left. And so she's remembering all this as she's approaching Mark. And so then we get back into real time, and Mark is looking at her like, who the hell is this? He didn't even remember who she was. And so when she tells him, you know, who she is, you know, he, once again, he seems happy to see her, but then confused as to why she's there. And so then we realize that Mark is still a loser all these years later. And so he starts talking about, you know, he has a band, and that, you know, they have a residency coming up, and that this job is just temporary because his boss then came out and told him, this third break you done had in the past hour, and if you don't get back here and get right, you're going to have to leave. He said, now you got 5 minutes to deal with that situation over there, but you need to get some act right in you. And so when he was talking about the band and the residency, you know, Kate was just looking at him like, yeah, sure you do. And I think the rest of us was looking at him the same way. So then Kate asked him, you know, what does he remember about their relationship? And he looking at her like, you came here to ask me what I remember about a relationship from all them years ago. And so then Kate was like, you know, oh, I know I shouldn't have came. And then he was like, no, wait, you know, come back. And so he says that, you know, basically it was just a 6-month relationship that was a bleep on the radar, right? Like, we did what we did, we had what we had, and then we moved on. So it was like he didn't even connect to the fact that he had traumatized her. And so he tells her that, you know, back then she was just a broken kid that he happened to stumble upon. And so Kate says, no, she was 18 years old, grieving the death of her father, and that he was a 24-year-old man who took advantage of her and ruined her life. Now, I didn't realize that Mark was that much older than her, or am I confusing Mark with somebody else that she dated? Because I thought they were around the same age. I guess I wasn't paying attention, or had done went to get something out the kitchen when they revealed that he was that much older than her, because I didn't realize that. And then I was thinking about my 2 youngest daughters, their dad. I was like, when me and him started dating, I think that was similar to our age difference, because he's like 6 years older than me. But I didn't see it as him taking advantage of me. I wanted to be with him. He wanted to be with me. And then we procreated. Okay. But Kate, of course, I was in an abusive relationship. He wasn't kicking my behind, talking down to me or mistreating me. So there is a difference. And so she lets him know that, her current life now is great, that she's no longer broken, that he's the one that's broken, and that he's the disease and she's not carrying it any longer, and that she's giving it back to him. And so it got me to thinking about two things, because this was such a good episode. I think that this was like one of the better episodes since season 1, when all the episodes was great. But Terry McMillan wrote this book, and I just finished reading the book. It took me forever to finish reading this book, and it was called I Almost Forgot About You. And so in this book, like, she's older, she's like in her 50s, I think, the character in the book is in their 50s, and she's thinking about like her 2 ex-husbands and all these guys that she dated back in high school and in college. And so she wants to reconnect with these guys. And so she goes on social media, find as many of them as she can. And then she reconnects with them, and none of them, have like a positive outcome except for one relationship. And it was like the one white guy that she had dated. And it was so hard for me to get through that book, because I'm like, who in their right mind does this? So would you want to go into the past, travel backwards, and find people that you once dated just to see how they're doing in life, what they thought about you back then, how, to determine how you've grown and how you want to move forward in your life? I just don't think that that's something I want to do. And then I think about, I had read this meme one time that says, how many people are on your timeline that you actually slept with or been in a relationship with, and y'all are acting like you never, like nothing ever went down between the two of you. And so I thought that was funny. And then the other thing, I actually had a situation where this guy that I was like really crazy about, like head over heels about this guy. And he ended up marrying, he left, okay, like we didn't have an official breakup. He just left and he married somebody else. And so I think he was married for about 10 years. And then after their marriage ended, he came back into my life. Like, he thought, okay, well, I'm single, you're single, so let's be together. And I remember, like, I was so offended that he thought that that was okay after the way he had treated me when we were in a relationship. And I remember saying to him, obviously you don't understand how much you hurt me when you did what you did. And he looked at me and he was like, what? And I said, you really hurt me. Like, there was no way in hell I would even think about getting into a relationship with you, knowing that you have the capability to be so cold, so callous, and so disinterested. And then about a year later, I found out that he married this other girl that he was fooling around with, because the chick that he married, I knew nothing about, but he and I had had problems before about this other chick that he had cheated on me with. And so a year later, he married that other chick. And so I was like, thank you, Jesus, okay, for the wherewithal to tell that joker to get on down the road. And so to wrap up, Kate, just want to put that out there to you guys. And they were kind of like going back and forth with flashback and just sliding into the current day. And so we go to her the day that she's going to actually have the abortion, and she's leaving the clinic, and then she ends up like in the car with Toby, and they're driving home. And so she lets Toby know that she wanted to tell him so many times, but didn't want him to see her as a victim, and that she's happy that he let her be her own white knight and not jump out the car and go up there and confront Mark with her. And so then in a flashback scene, Rebecca returns home and senses that something is wrong, but Kate tells her that it was the movie, that she was watching that had her all emotional. And then her and Toby are back home watching Airplane, and they're laughing and enjoying the movie. So all's well that ends well. So now let's go over here to Crazy Kevin and Confused Madison, because they're about to get on my nerves, okay? Kevin and Madison, they're settling into their fake complicated situationship. Now, they are really giving us a new definition of entanglement here, okay? So Kevin has finished their nursery, he's put the crib and everything together, and now it's time to interview a nanny. So him and Madison are talking when he gets this phone call, and the phone call didn't even seem real. I'm like, okay, I think Kevin might have set that up. And so the manager allegedly is calling to let him know that because of COVID, they decided to move the filming of the movie to Vancouver. And so he tells the person, which we later learn is the agent, that, okay, well, I'm not going to be able to do it. I got these twins on the way. There's just no way possible. You're just going to have to tell them that I can't do it. And so that was the fake and phony part that let me know that there was nobody on that phone. So, Madison immediately tells him that it'll be okay, and it's only for a few weeks, and that she'll be okay by herself. So then we get a flashback scene of Kevin, and he recalls a dinner when he announces that he has an audition in New York and will be traveling alone. And so Rebecca, Randall, and Beth and Sophia are all there. Y'all remember Sophia is his first wife. And so Sophia seems okay with his decision and tells him to go on and do what he has to do. So back in modern times, we have Kevin and Madison interviewing a nanny named Natasha. And so Kevin throws in the question about travel and asks Natasha, will you be able to travel with us? And so he and Madison, get into this back and forth in front of the lady, even though the lady said, oh yeah, I've had clients that I've traveled with before. Him and Madison start going back and forth, showing the lady that they're not on the same page about his career moves, that Madison isn't planning on traveling anywhere with him. Kevin is like, well, I want my family to be together, and with, modern technology, like there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to, you just come and go with me wherever I have to go. And so the nanny assures them that she has a passport. She keeps her passport current, and that she is skilled in helping families adjust to unplanned relocations. After the nanny leaves, Madison is all in her feelings as usual. And so she wants to stay home, and seems to want Kevin to choose between his career and staying home with her and the kids. And so Kevin is acting like he doesn't see what's happening and suggests that they can let the nanny roll off into the Range Rover that she drove up in if Madison really doesn't like her. And so Kevin keeps coming with the jokes, but Madison is getting more pissed off by the second. And so I don't think that she thought Kevin would get the job, the acting role. Like, I think she had played into Kevin, the woe is me Kevin, who can't get a job, that, since the nanny ended, his acting career has just been going downhill. And so I think she encouraged him with the belief that there was no way he was going to get this role. And so Kevin asks Madison, if she wants him to quit acting. And so he's struggling to understand how all of this is news to her. So then Madison admits that she didn't have clear expectations about what their relationship would be, and then throws out that she was content raising the kids alone, but now she's falling in love with the idea of, them having a family, and it's screwing her all up. Her hormones are raging and carrying on. And so then, she lays down in the bed, and Kevin lays down next to her and says that he agrees, he's falling in love with the idea of them being a family also. So then I think it's like the next day or whenever Kevin's supposed to be leaving to go to Vancouver. And so he's getting ready to leave, and Madison has fixed him a to-go bag with some snacks in it. And so they have like this awkward exchange between them. And then I realized like it's like they're playing house. They really don't have this emotional attachment or bond with each other that a couple would have. And so Madison tells him, well, Kevin started going into one of his speeches, where he's going to do whatever Madison wants and what's best for the family. And so she tells him to save the speech and get real with his future plans and make sure, that he knows what he's getting into, what it means, and what he expects from the relationship. And so their goodbye just seems so awkward because, she's like, tell the babies bye. And then he bends down and he's like, yeah. And then he kisses each side of her belly. Then he stands back up. And two people that are in love with each other, that would have been the moment that he would have bust some slob in the woman's mouth, and hugged her and caressed her and not want to let her go. But instead, he was just standing there like he didn't know what to do. And then finally, he went to kiss her, and I think she kind of turned her head. So he kind of kissed her over here instead of smack dab on her lips. And I don't know. I thought this relationship was going to be cute in the beginning, but now I'm not so sure I want this relationship to last. So then Kevin has a flashback scene of Randall calling him one night to say that he doesn't think that he should go to Los Angeles because he thinks it will destroy his relationship with Sophie. But Kevin assures him that when he becomes a big star, it will be all worth it. And so now I think he's having the realization that him being an actor and traveling is what killed his relationship with Sophie. And maybe that's going to be the same thing that's going to happen with Madison, because remember, he was in love with Sophie. He ain't in love with Madison. He's just in love with the idea of being a father to these twins so he can, be the dad that Jack was, I guess. So then Kevin looks at his phone and stares at the picture of him and Madison, before calling Randall, because she's like on the screensaver. And so Randall is still being an asshole and acting like Kevin, wouldn't just call to see how he's doing. And so he's like, oh, is Rebecca okay? Did anything happen? Is it Kate? Not asking about Kevin. And so they have like a brief back and forth where Kevin, finally gets to the point. So he wants advice from Randall on how to deal with his issues with Madison. And so Randall tears up, but can't let the hurt go from, that big argument that they had where Kevin said that, he wished they had left Randall at the hospital and not brought him home. And so Kevin tries to apologize, but then switches gears to address what Kate told him about how Randall felt growing up. And so he's still trying to apologize, but then Randall is like, you know what? I hate to do this, man. I hate to cut you off, but I need to make an important phone call. And then he hangs up and Kevin's like, well, damn, what am I going to do now? Okay. So then we move over to Randall. And this is where the floodgates opened up, y'all. Okay, like I was like, oh, this is getting so good. So Randall arrives to work and his staff is all dressed in these muscle bodysuits and boxer briefs like the ones that he had on when he was caught on video. And they're all dancing around, making light of the situation. So Randall isn't fully amused by their antics. And so he goes into his office and Jawan follows. And so he shares with him Jawan shares with Randall an email that was left on their website. And so it turns out that it's from the Asian guy. Yes. So Randall comes home early, to share the news about the email. And the guy's name is Hai Ling. I wrote down Hai Ling, so we're going to go with that. And so he shares the email with Beth. He's reading it to her and Beth is just astonished. And so we learned that Laurel died in 2015 of breast cancer. And so the email has a picture of Laurel and William in it. And so when Beth is like, oh my God, is that her, Randall? Randall walks off and was like, I don't know if that's her. I ain't never seen the woman before. I'm just like... Now, he was right about not having seen the woman before, but it was just a natural instinct for Beth to ask the question. So, of course, he's in his feelings and thinking the worst. Everybody lied to him about Laura being dead. William had to know that she was still alive. Why would he tell him this story about Laura passing away? And then the more I say Laurel, the more I think in previous videos I called her Lauren. And if I did, I apologize. So he goes upstairs and he's staring at the picture, and then Beth comes up, to try and console him, but he acts like he's unbothered. He's putting on his sneakers. He's getting ready, to go for a run. And he tells Beth that he called Monk's and ordered, some food because he's craving crab legs all of a sudden. And I guess after he finishes his run, he's going to swing by and pick up the crab legs, or the crab legs are going to be delivered. So then Beth calls out to him, and so then he gets up and he pecks Beth on the cheek. And so then Beth calls him out for giving her a peck and go. And she insists that they talk about the email. But Randall says that he's got his answers, that after 36 years, and that William had lied to him. And so in a flashback scene, he recalls the story William shared about Laurel wanting to get clean so that she could have a healthy pregnancy. And after the birth, the pain took over like a demon, and that she died the next day. And so Beth tells him that, he really needs to call his therapist, but Randall says that he needs to go for a run. And then after he run down the stairs, Beth was like, no, I think you really need to go talk to your therapist. So while he's out, Randall, stops at a park bench, and he calls the therapist and tells him about, a time when he was young. Well, he's telling the therapist, about the email. And during their conversation, he tells the therapist about all the times that he tried to find his parents and how he had put I can't remember what the earlier things were, but he put a ad in the paper, I think, when he was like 16 or something. And this lady came up, showed up, reached out to him, and pretending that she was Laurel, but she really wasn't, and that it was just a scam. And, he breaks down and says that it hurt so much that he stopped looking for her, after 30 years, and then come to find out that had he kept looking, he may have found Laurel before she passed away. And I think when he was 19, he hired a private investigator. And when he was another age, he did something else. And so the therapist explains to him that his whole life, his instincts have been telling him that he needs to know his story, that he needs his history. And he asks Randall, why do you think that is? And so Randall admits that admits that it was to make him feel rooted, as if he belonged to something or belonged to somebody. And so the therapist asks if William helped him do that. And then Randall admits that, the time he spent with William, he did get to learn more about himself, and he felt more connected, during that time than he did, when he was growing up with Beth and Jack and the Pearson kids. And so the therapist tells him to really be in the journey and to learn Laurel's story. And so then Randall was looking at him like, I don't know, I'll think about it. And so then he finally decides, to call Hai Lang, after hanging up with Kevin. So when we get to the end of the phone call with Kevin, that's who Randall has decided he needs to, it's going to be this important phone call that he needs to make. And so, he tells Beth he's going to call. And so Hai is happy that he did call. And he asks him, was William lying when he told him that Laurel died? And Hai Lang says that he believes that William believed that Laurel was dead at that moment. And so then Hai, basically tells Randall that he wants to talk to him in person. He wants to show him where Laurel lived and the things that she loved. And then Randall says that he would love to come to see the places where Laurel lived and the things that she loved. Y'all, when Randall found out about that little girl, because I'm hoping that little girl is related somehow to Laurel. It's like a blood relation, like a little sister or something to Randall. Like, I'm going to be over it, okay? Because it's just going to be too overwhelming. I'm already anticipating the joy that I am going to feel as Randall goes on this journey to learn more about Laurel and learn about Hai Lang and learn how this little girl is related in some kind of way. And I thought that, well, I guess he is, because if Laurel died in 2015 and the twins are what, 40? 40, 41, something like that. Yeah, so that can't be. So maybe Laurel and Hai Ling had a baby. Hai Lang had a baby. And then that little girl is their granddaughter. Y'all help me out here and let me know in the comments. But anyway, that's it for this episode. Like I said, this was like they taking us back to season 1, how good this episode was, and I was happy for it. And I'm looking forward, to tonight's episode and bringing you guys the recap in the morning. So that's it for me. Leave your comments below, rate the video, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And until the next time, I shall talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.